Now I want to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Larry Megan. Larry is the director at Praxair Digital. And again, Larry's full bio is in the app. And Larry will now share with us Praxair's vision of the future. Please join me welcoming Larry to the stage.
Thanks, Andy. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Oh, that's not bad. Good morning, everybody. I teach a Sunday school class, and I always try to get the kids going in the morning, so I appreciate it helping me out here. So I'm very excited. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, to really share with you guys some things we've learned, some of the things we need to do better, so that maybe after this we can share notes and really talk about how we collectively can kind of move this forward. Here's the title that I was going to use, but I couldn't fit it on the front of the slide very effectively. And really the point is all of us are inundated with digital transformation, and what are we going to do about it? And it's hard for any of us, I know it's hard for us, to really sort out what's hype and what's reality, and really try to understand there's 100 different technologies, there's 100 different vendors coming at us these days. How do we sort out what's real, what's not, and really how are we going to best focus our time? I know we're challenged with that. I'm sure you are as well. So I'd like to kind of share a couple of thoughts around how we're trying to deal with that. Because look, we know the promise is great, and you just saw 3 excellent examples of how digitalization can really transform a business. And so you hear about all the promise, but sometimes many of us are faced with this, right? We all have technical debt, we all have organizational debt, we have cultural debt, right? We have a lot, right? Unless you're working for a startup, sometimes it's a big change to go from where you're at to where you want to be. And really the question is, how are you going to get there? So the first message that I would give you, and kind of the first takeaway, is when you think about digital transformation, people get in these big debates around what's the definition of digital transformation? Does it mean AI? Does it mean blockchain? Does it mean this or augmented reality, et cetera, right? To us, digital transformation is really whatever it means to you, right? It's around where are you at today? Where do you want to go? Where does your business need to go? I can't tell you what digital transformation means for your business. All the consulting companies who have the same 20-page slide deck around helping you on your digital transformation journey, they can't tell you what that is, right? You have to decide what that really is going to mean for you. If you ask us, I will tell you that it depends. It depends on what business unit you're talking about. It depends even what function within each business unit you're talking about. Because at the end of the day, fundamentally what we're trying to do is use digital technologies to move their businesses forward, right? And again, that definition really depends. On the IT side, they often talk about digital transformation being business model change versus digital optimization being just, right, we're going to make things a little bit better. And honestly, either of those is okay. So you have to just look at your business, say, where are we at, where we're going to go, and help define it for yourself. So don't get in my opinion, don't get too hung up on the definitions of what digital transformation is. Just figure out what you're going to do to move your business forward. So let me give you some things that we think about as we go through that journey. One is, let me back up a little bit, never start with technology. Now you'll hear that all the time, and yet I still read stories in the Wall Street Journal around this company has their AI strategy, and this company has their blockchain strategy. And I think that's fine if you're a sort of a technology-centric company, but a company like Praxair, an industrial gas business, we're a capital-intensive manufacturing company, and digital is there to complement us doing what we're doing, right? So never start with technology. Is it possible that maybe you can have too much IoT? Maybe, right, if you think about it. So never start with that. Really feel your customer's experience, and I don't mean just doing a voice of the customer. Really feel and understand whether it's an internal customer or an external customer. My 84-year-old mother goes to a local healthcare provider, and they started to put tablets in the waiting room to manage the check-in and the reception process. And it sounds like a great productivity idea until you sit in a waiting room with a group of octogenarians, and they're all sitting there complaining about, where are the people? I just want to talk to somebody. I hate this computer age. What's going on, right? So really understand what's important to your customers. You have to think about not just doing interesting digital experiments or moving down new things. And look, we're in that business as well. But you have to really think about what are the foundational platforms in your company that will enable you to scale. Because if you don't have those, you won't be able to scale. High historian systems, your ERP systems, your logistics systems, your whatever, right? All of those things have to be modernized, or you have to be working towards modernization of those things if you want to take advantage of these kind of technologies. And like I say, really do so at scale. Because without that, you won't be successful. So really, as you're thinking about what's the next new thing that we want to do around AI or whatever it is, you also have to have your bifocals on and not only have that long-term view, but that short-term view and be able to convince your management, because I know it's a difficult discussion around, hey, you know what, we get this 20-year-old ERP system and all this other stuff out there is great, but our foundation is really crumbling and it's stopping us from really moving to where we need to go. So don't lose sight of those things. And finally, we start to think more about products versus projects, right? So Praxair, it's an engineering company. Historically, we build software like an engineering company, right? Give us your spec document, right? Great, we'll build something to it, we'll hand it over to you, and we're done. Great, we'll move on to the next thing. But in the digital world, we have to steal more from the IT side, and we have to start developing software like a software company, which means using agile methodologies, using continuous improvement, and really having a mindset. It's as much a mindset as everything else that says, we're not just developing a project that once the capital budget is up, we're done, but we're actually developing a product that we have to maintain, sustain, improve as time goes on, and adapt as time goes on. And again, if we don't do that, then we won't be successful. And that's not just a mindset change for us as a development organization, but also certainly for our business as well. And we have to help drive that change. Oops. No, wait a minute. Sorry about that. Okay. Finally, know your path to value, right? So obviously everybody talks about ROI. What's the ROI? How are we going to justify it? We're going to do smaller pilots because then we can justify some initial investment and kind of experiment a little, and that's great. And while up front, sometimes it's difficult to say explicitly, this is the value I expect from this product, you should at least have a vision of what's our path to value. And so when you talk about digitalization, some of the things that we typically see, right, using data to get more real-time visibility, to get granularity. So now maybe we can get information at a customer level from the previous presentation. Now we can see what's going on at an elevator level, individual elevator level in real time versus what we're able to see in the past, right? So how can you use that information? How do you reduce friction, right? How do we reduce friction within our organization, between ourselves and our customers, between ourselves and our suppliers, right? How do we take advantage of connectivity to do that? And again, more broadly, right, how do we really look at our ecosystem and who's our ecosystem and how can we create platforms from the IT world? How can we use APIs? How can we use technology to enable a more frictionless, connected experience between ourselves within, like I say, within our organization as well as outside of our organization? And finally, my sort of final high-level thought is digitalization is not about being more digital. Right? I ask that question of our business leadership all the time. Hey, what is digitalization? What do you think about when you think about digitalization? And the answers I get are more often than not always, but more often than not, sort of from a technology perspective. But the reality is it's not about being more digital. It's fundamentally about changing how people do their jobs. And if you're not willing to put in the effort to understand those aspects, and to manage through those aspects, and honestly, this is the hard part of it, more often than not, then you're not going to be successful in any kind of a digital transformation kind of journey or experience, right? Most technology projects, in our experience, don't fail because the technologists couldn't figure out a solution. It's because we collectively were not able to manage the change that was required in the organization to be able to enable that. So let me tell you a few examples around what we're doing at Praxair. And first, let's give you a little quick background around the business itself. There's really three main, so Praxair is an industrial gas supplier. We supply oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, et cetera, to just about any kind of manufacturing operation that you can think of, as well as we provide our products in some consumer markets as well. So for example, CO2 for beverage carbonation. The next time you have a beer, you can thank Praxair, one of our competitors, for that. Home care oxygen for home care, for respiratory therapy, right? So we really have three main supply modes that I've highlighted up here. One is our large, by our standards, large on-site process plants. So we literally build a plant adjacent to a customer like a steel mill or a refiner or a semiconductor fab, have a big pipeline, and we send them oxygen right over. And it's basically, from their perspective, a utility, right? I open up the valve, the oxygen comes out, it's like flicking on the light switch, right? So that's the kind of perspective that our customers have. Our second supply mode is liquid, so kind of for medium-sized customers, hospitals, universities. We'll take some of that same product, put it in those big storage tanks that you can see in the top left picture, and then truck it around and deliver it to our customers. Has some very interesting IoT aspects to it, because we actually in real time monitor the volume in those tanks and then use that so that we proactively manage the deliveries, right, versus waiting for the customers to call us. Again, because our customers just basically want hands up, I want it to be there, I don't want to have to think about it, but I want 100% reliability. And then finally, our final supply mode is our packaged gas or our cylinder gas mode, which is very different from the top one. Whereas in the top one, we might have, let's say, 1,000 plants worldwide. In the bottom one, we have hundreds of thousands of customers and a much more diverse set of products, very transactional intensive, et cetera. So very interesting diversity as you look across at our portfolio. And we have digital solutions across all of these. Given the nature of this conference, I'm going to focus primarily on the top one, which is our on-site plants, and tell you about some of the things that we're doing. So, what's the business strategy? And then what are the digital things that we think about to solve that business strategy? As I said earlier, we never start with technology strategy. Maybe within my team, because we're the technology team, we talk about it. But more broadly, I don't sit in front of our executives and say, hey, here's our AI strategy. We say, here's the business strategy, and here's how technology is going to help you support that strategy. Right? So I mentioned our customers, our on-site customers, expect high reliability. So we're doing a lot of work around lowering the cost of sensing or trying to find lower cost sensors, the analytics, so that we can run those plants as efficiently and as reliably as possible, right? So high reliability is core to our business. It's a core function of the business model, so we try to drive towards that. Again, these plants, the process plants, are very energy intensive. The industrial gas business uses around 2% of the overall energy used in manufacturing in the US. Those plants, like the one that I showed you on that top picture, use tens of megawatts of power. So very energy intensive. So we're always looking at automation. How can we do more to automate and make sure we're squeezing every last drop of energy efficiency out of there? Oh, yikes. Oh my gosh. I might need some AV help over there. I'll keep going though. Oh, there we go. All right. So in case you missed anything the first time around, here's your chance. I got a little happy on the trigger, I think. Thank you. So lower fixed costs. So we have, I mentioned, of those large on-site plants, we probably have 250 of those globally and about another 600 or 700 small ones. And you can't afford to have highly trained engineers at all of those facilities. So really you have to rely a lot on remote operation of those facilities. And being able to bring the information back to the experts so they can help solve problems. And then finally, I mentioned already our execution focus and how we're trying to do more and steal from the IT world around using things like agile development as part of our processes. So high reliability. So where are we today on our journey? We're starting to do more. Again, this is an example around reciprocating compressors. We have 1,000 big reciprocating compressors in the world. We have a similar number of really large centrifugal compressors in the world. All, big pieces of equipment out there running. And you got to know, like everybody else talks in this space, it's the same problem that many people talk about. The reliability of the equipment. How do we get more predictive in our reliability? How do we know when there's a problem, et cetera? So we've been working at it for a while. Today we've been doing more to find ways to change the cost of instrumenting those plants by an order of magnitude, whether it be sensors, high-speed data loggers, those kinds of things, so that we can get the right level of information to the experts when they need it. So today, we're pretty good at getting more data, and at least being able to, from an analytical perspective, say, hey, this machine is not operating the same as it was when we baselined it, right? So there's, and probably here's where the gaps are. But we're not where we want to be at with respect to, hey, I can more specifically, I have a limited number of experts, and now I can more specifically tell them, here's the specific problem you need to fix, right? We're not quite there yet. We're targeting somebody at a machine, there's a problem, try to go fix it, here's some guidance, right? But we want to get them that next step around really helping, because again, we have a relatively small number of people who are supporting all these facilities trying to figure out what the problems are, right? So really, how do we get better information to the experts so that they can do their job more effectively? For us, it's not about reducing headcount. It's about that it's hard to hire and develop people who have the right level of expertise to solve these problems and a growing asset base. And so how do we target their time as effectively as possible? And we're able to do this because I talked about earlier, we have a pretty solid foundation within our operations space that we've worked on over the last 15 years around global historian systems, global work order management systems, et cetera, right? So we have that as a common platform and foundation that enables us to do some of the things that we want to do. Where are we headed? Trying to do more at the edge. I mentioned if you're a vibration specialist, we're collecting data at thousands of samples per second, and you want to be able to analyze that. So trying to do more with that data at the edge. What I call collaborative analysis. Today, the business model is we buy a big machine from a vendor. We run it through. We sign off on it once it meets its design point, and then we own the operation of that from there on. Now, there are companies out there, right, in the equipment space who now will sell me essentially reliability as a service, right? We'll monitor it. We'll take your machine. We'll take all the data back. We'll do the analysis. We'll tell you when something's wrong. I don't want that either. I want something in between. I want something where we can collaborate because we have the operational experience. I want a platform that enables me to collaborate with the equipment design expertise, but not as a service, not as a black box. It has to be much more of an open, collaborative kind of environment. And so how do we develop the technologies as well as the business models to enable that? And then finally, I mentioned a platform strategy, or I mentioned using agile techniques, thinking about products. So not just thinking about, here's a reliability tool over here, and here's a reliability tool over here, but let's try to build them along a common platform, and then let's organize our team in such a way so that they're looking at, we have these 3 products that we're supporting, and how are we going to align our resources to best meet those needs? Sometimes we need upgrades, sometimes we need new developments, right? But rethinking more of a platform view of how we execute versus a project view. Energy efficiency, I mentioned, is energy intensive. What I'm showing at the top is some work that we've done with the DOE over the past few years that's been publicized, where we put infrared imaging cameras into our steam methane reformers, which is basically a process where you take syngas, take methane and steam, mix it together, you make syngas, and then from there we take hydrogen out of that syngas stream. If you haven't seen one of these furnaces before, it's about a 40 by 40 by 40 foot big box of refractory that has a lot of flames. If you ever want to get a picture of what hell looks like, you open up one of the doors in one of these things, right? And you look in, and it's running at 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. And so you can't have a lot of sensing equipment within the system because it's such a harsh environment. But we have been doing more around putting infrared cameras around the perimeter and then using that data to basically help us understand gas, temperature, flow distribution across the furnace so that we can even it out and ultimately make it more efficient. Where are we headed next? Again, low-cost sensors are really important to us. We're not sensor experts. We have a couple people who know it a little bit, right? But really trying to find those partners out there. This bottom part of the slide really goes back to developing your ecosystem, right? So who can we partner with on low-cost sensing and sensing development? We're working with the DOE Smart Manufacturing Institute around what I call a robust digital twin. Back in the old days, we used to just call them models. Now we call them digital twins. But if you look at a process plant, there's multiple digital twins associated with it, right? Whether it be at the control system level, at the equipment level, at the process level. And we're pretty good at building them, but there's still a lot of opportunity, I think, to be able to make them so that they're easier to maintain without a room full of PhDs, and that they're really aligned with each of them are aligned within that stack over time, right? As things change, as catalysts change, as equipment performance changes, et cetera. So working with them on that. And then many folks here are already familiar with the open platform effort that Exxon has been sponsoring, and we also are part of that as we see it as a potential mechanism for us to help solve our problem of technical debt, right? How do you get out of the problem of, once I put a control system in, it's there for 25 years and I'm kind of stuck with it, and it is what it is, right? So how do we move on from that? And then finally, around lowering fixed costs, again, I mentioned today we're pretty good at remote operation, having remote operating centers. We've put in a lot of infrastructure around that to enable remote connectivity globally. And where we're trying to get to, that's basically a process of bringing the data back to the expert. And really where we need to go to next is now bringing the solutions back to the field in a way that's most consumable for the folks in the field. And whether it be from an augmented FaceTime kind of solution, whether it be from AR or other things like that, right? Really, again, trying to enable this idea of I have a relatively small number of experts, and how do I make that as a frictionless experience and connectivity to those folks out in the field. Finally, just last couple slides, leaving technology for a second. As you're thinking about digital transformation, you got to think hard about the culture in your company. I mentioned all those things about debt that you have to deal with. If you don't help build a culture that's accepting of digital solution, that's experimental, has some experimental and sort of DNA in it, then you're never going to be successful, right? So how do you get there? Of course, you have to invest in these initiatives and show success, and then more and more people start to see the value. You have to help your leadership understand what the opportunities are, and we've been doing that as well. And you have to communicate well with your success stories, right? So don't be afraid to really go out and market internally and share internally around all the successes that our people are having. For example, one thing that we did just as a simple cultural building experience is corporately wide. We basically did an I Need an App contest. So we asked everybody in the corporation, right, on intranet site, what kind of an app would you need? We got about 500 entries from across the corporation. We've narrowed it down to about 10 that we'll fund. Relatively easy to execute. And again, maybe not game changers, but again, a mechanism to engage the whole organization and get them to start to feel like Praxair is not just a manufacturing company or a financially stable company, but we're a digital company as well, right? We're not trying to be Google, we're not trying to be Amazon, but within the manufacturing space, we are trying to demonstrate thought leadership here. So then finally, my last slide, just a few takeaways to reemphasize a couple of points that I mentioned. Focus on the job to be done. Don't focus on the technology. Digital transformation can mean whatever you want it to mean, right? So think about what it should mean for you and your business. Build that foundation. Have your bifocals on. Don't think about just technology pilots, but where are the cracks in the foundation and what can we do about it? Expand your ecosystem. Nothing gets done internally anymore. That ecosystem can be academia. It can be the startup community, right? There's several startups that are out at the trade show here today. Really think about expanding your ecosystem to get the best information you can. ARC is certainly a great enabler of that. And finally, avoid the big splash mentality and avoid the mentality of, man, we're going to do this big AI project and it's going to be awesome and everybody's going to love us and we're going to be, we're going to be heroes and everything, right? Digital transformation is really the ongoing, continuous pursuit of excellence. It's no different, in my mind, in that sense, than productivity has been for years, right? Today, we're going to push the rock up the hill a little bit further than we did yesterday, and tomorrow we're going to do the same. And if we keep doing that, then ultimately we'll have plenty of success to show to everybody in the company. So with that, thank you for your time.